This story is called I Paid My Half Sister's College Tuition, but she publicly defamed me, so I ended our relationship. Now, my family is upset. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's video, I could use your support. We've noticed the channel has been losing some momentum, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us out. It's quick, free, and ensures we can continue providing you with great content. Your support truly means the world to us, so let's keep this channel growing together. Thank you so much. Now, let's get started with the video. Hey everyone, I'm really struggling with this situation, and honestly, it feels like my entire life has been flipped upside down in the last few weeks. I'm 27, female, and made a major commitment to help my half-sister Jenna, who's 19, female, with her college expenses. But something happened recently that made me question everything. I don't even know where to start, so I'll give you the background and let you decide if I'm a complete jerk or not. First, Jenna and I have the same mom but different dads. I'm from my mom's first marriage, and she's from her second. Even though we're half-sisters, we've always been really close, like real sisters. The whole half-sibling thing never really seemed to matter. I'm the oldest, so I've always looked out for her. I helped her with homework when mom was busy, stayed up with her during her first breakup, and even taught her how to drive, which was terrifying but also kind of funny. When her dad passed away last year, I was right there with her. She was heartbroken, and I did everything I could to be her support. I'd drive her to grief counseling, take her out for ice cream to cheer her up, and just let her talk about things I couldn't fix. I honestly thought we had this unbreakable bond where we'd always have each other's backs no matter what. But then, things started changing. Jenna went from being the sweet, lively kid I grew up with to someone who acted like the world was against her. She became defensive and started blaming her friends for all kinds of things, like borrowing clothes and not returning them, or taking things like makeup and accessories. She'd call me, complaining that so-and-so probably took this, or how could they betray her like that? And I didn't know how to respond. I honestly thought it was just grief talking. So I never called her out on it. Maybe I should have, but hindsight is 2020. Meanwhile, my life was finally getting on track. I graduated from college, landed a good job, and was starting to save for post-grad studies after years of struggling. Things seemed to be looking up. Then, Jenna got accepted into a local college, and everyone was thrilled. Mom was especially happy, but financially, things weren't great for her. Losing her husband had been tough, and paying for Jenna's tuition was out of the question. So, Mom asked me if I could help. Naturally, I said yes. Jenna's my sister, and family supports family. I told Mom I'd pay for her tuition as long as Jenna worked part-time to cover her own expenses. I even offered to let her live with me, rent-free, since the school was close to my place. It seemed like a good plan at the time, but I didn't realize how much of a strain it would put on me. Helping Jenna meant I had to cut back. No more weekend getaways with friends or buying random things I didn't really need. But I was okay with that. I wanted to give her the chance to focus on her studies without worrying about money. I thought we'd go through this new phase of life like we always had, together. When Jenna moved in, things didn't go as expected. At first, it felt like a fresh start for both of us. But after a few weeks, she started hanging out with a new group of friends who made me uneasy. They were loud, careless, and disrespectful. They'd show up at my apartment at all hours, acting like it was their space, not mine. I tried to stay cool about it at first, thinking maybe I was just being too uptight. But the more I observed them, the more something didn't feel right. They gave off this shady vibe, like the kind of people you wouldn't trust around your belongings for too long. One time I caught one of them snooping around my kitchen cabinets like they were looking for something. After a few nights of this behavior, I finally spoke up to Jenna. I told her I wasn't comfortable with her friends coming over so often and that they seemed suspicious. Her response was, "It's none of your business who I hang out with." I was stunned. I didn't want to argue, so I bit my tongue and let it go. But deep down, I was concerned. Something about those friends didn't feel right, like they were involved in something sketchy. But I had no proof, so I kept my worries to myself. To make matters worse, Jenna wasn't holding up her end of the deal. She wasn't looking for a part-time job like we'd agreed, and she wasn't doing her share of the housework either. I started feeling more like her maid than her sister. I didn't want to nag her, but it was frustrating. I was sacrificing a lot to help her, cutting back on spending, missing trips with friends, and putting my post-grad plans on hold. The least she could do was meet me halfway. Around the same time, I finally managed to buy a car. It was an old sedan, nothing fancy, but it was reliable. I had been saving for months, and it felt like a huge accomplishment. I called Mom to tell her the news while Jenna sat next to me on the couch, casually scrolling through her phone. "Mom, I got the car," I said excitedly. "I just need a little more money to finish paying it off, but it's almost done." Mom sounded so happy for me. "That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm proud of you." Jenna didn't say anything. She just kept scrolling. I didn't think much of it. I wasn't trying to hide anything. It was just a moment I wanted to share. For a brief moment, I thought maybe things were looking up. I had my car, Jenna was settling into her life, and I hoped we'd find our rhythm. I even thought the car might be something we could bond over, something positive for both of us. I was driving her to school and helping with errands after all. But instead of being happy for me, she started acting distant, irritable, and more distant. Her tone was off, like she had something to say, but wouldn't say it. Then came the event that changed everything. We had planned a simple trip to the lake to celebrate the car. Nothing fancy, just a relaxing day. Jenna seemed excited, which was rare lately, so I looked forward to it. On the morning of the trip, we were packing the car. I was gathering snacks and blankets when I heard her yell from her room. It wasn't the usual dramatic yelling, it was full-blown panic. I dropped everything and rushed to her room, thinking she had hurt herself. She was in the middle of her room, tearing through her bags like a maniac. Clothes were flying everywhere, drawers were open, and she looked frantic. "What's going on?" I asked, genuinely concerned. "My dad's camera," she said, her voice shaking. "It's gone." For context, this wasn't just any camera. It was a vintage, gold-plated Leica Luxus, worth thousands of dollars. It had been in her father's family for generations. She had told me about it before, how her dad used it when she was little, and how it was one of the few things she had left of him. I knew how important it was to her, so I immediately started helping her search. We tore apart her room, the living room, and even the car. But the camera was gone. I asked if she was sure she brought it with her when she moved in. She hesitated for a second, like she was considering the possibility, but then shook her head. "I had it. I was using it just the other day." I suggested we retrace her steps. Maybe she left it at a friend's house or in one of their cars. The moment I said that, her whole demeanor shifted. She stopped searching, crossed her arms, and gave me this look. Half frustration, half accusation. "I didn't leave it anywhere," she said slowly. "Someone must have taken it." I was confused. Taken it? Who would take it? Then it hit me. She wasn't just saying someone had taken it. She was accusing me. "Are you seriously accusing me of stealing your camera?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. I was so shocked I didn't even know how to respond. I mean, I knew she had been weird about trust lately, but I never imagined she'd go that far, accusing her own sister. "I'm just saying," she started defensively. "It's strange how you suddenly have money for a car, and now my camera's missing. Don't you think that's convenient?" I stared at her, completely stunned. After everything I'd done for her, paying her tuition, letting her live with me rent-free, dealing with her messy friends, this is how she saw me? As some kind of thief? "Are you kidding me right now?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I've been saving for that car for months. You've seen me work extra hours. You've seen me skip out on things to afford it, and now you're accusing me of pawning your dad's camera to cover the rest?" She shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. "I don't know. It's just suspicious timing." That word, suspicious, felt like a punch in the gut. I couldn't believe she'd actually say that to me, let alone believe it. I told her I had receipts to prove every penny I spent on the car. But she just rolled her eyes and kept rummaging through her things, muttering about how convenient everything seemed. The most painful part wasn't the accusation itself. It was the fact that she didn't trust me. After everything we had been through, all the times I'd been there for her, she thought I could steal something so important to her. It felt like a slap in the face. At that point, I didn't even know what to say. I just walked out of the room, grabbed my keys, and told her I'd be waiting in the car if she still wanted to go to the lake. part of me hoped she'd come out and apologize, but she didn't. She just sulked the entire drive, barely speaking, and that was the beginning of the end. After the lake trip and the missing camera, things between Jenna and me became unbearably tense. She barely spoke to me unless she had to, and even then, her tone was harsh, like I had done something unforgivable. It was passive-aggressive, like everything about her attitude screamed, "You're the problem." She'd leave her things all over the apartment, forget to clean up after herself, and blast the TV when I was trying to work. I ignored it at first, not wanting to make things worse, but it wasn't just that. It was everything. Then, suddenly, little things around the apartment started going missing. At first, it was random stuff, like my phone charger, my favorite coffee mug, and a few reusable grocery bags. At first, I thought I had just misplaced them, but then I started noticing some of the missing items in her room. My charger was plugged into her phone. The coffee mug I'd been searching for all week was sitting on her nightstand, half full of some unknown drink. When I asked her about it, she just shrugged and said something like, "I didn't think you'd mind." I tried to let it slide. It wasn't worth arguing over. And honestly, I was too mentally exhausted to care. But then, things escalated. I began finding my things damaged. A picture frame I'd had since college was cracked. My favorite water bottle, one I had used for years, now had a huge dent in it. My plants, which I'd been caring for, looked like they had been overwatered to the point of dying. The fact that she didn't even acknowledge it made things worse. It wasn't just the things either. Jenna's behavior became more reckless. Her friends were over constantly, and they weren't exactly quiet. They'd blast music, leave trash everywhere, and even use my bathroom like it was theirs. I confronted Jenna about it later, and she rolled her eyes like I was overreacting. "They're my friends," she said, as though that explained everything. "Why do you care so much?" "Because this is my apartment, Jenna," I snapped back. "I'm the one paying rent. I'm the one who has to clean up after them. You can't just let them treat this place like it's a free-for-all." Instead of apologizing, she just stared at me blankly and said, "Well, maybe you shouldn't have invited me to live here if you didn't want to deal with my life." That sentence hit me hard. I had invited her to stay with me to help her get a better start, so she wouldn't have to worry about rent or bills while in school. And this is how she saw it, like it was some burden I'd put on myself. I didn't even know how to respond, so I walked away. But the worst part, the whole camera incident, wasn't going away. Jenna wasn't accusing me outright anymore, but she didn't need to. The damage had already been done. Every time I walked into a room, I could feel her eyes on me, like she was waiting for me to slip up or reveal something. It was suffocating. And the gossip, it spread like wildfire. Somehow the whole missing camera story had leaked. I suspected it was Jenna who told her friends, and it felt like the entire town was talking about it. I live in a small town, and everyone knows everyone's business. The gossip machine here is faster than the internet. I'd walk into the grocery store and feel like I was the star of a reality show. You know that moment in Mean Girls when Regina George spreads a rumor about Janice? Yeah, that was me. Only instead of the cafeteria, it was aisle 5 next to the cereal. I'd get side-eye looks at the store and whispers behind my back at work. Even my boss pulled me aside, not to scold me, but to get the scoop. She loves gossip, but thankfully stayed out of it. At first, I tried to brush off the accusations because I knew I hadn't taken the camera. But as the whispers got louder and the stares grew harder to ignore, I started to question myself. What if I had accidentally moved it? Could it have fallen into one of my bags when I was helping Jenna unpack? I replayed every moment from the last few weeks, trying to see if there was any truth to what she was saying. I even started searching through my own drawers and shelves to be sure. It felt ridiculous, but the pressure was getting to me. Everyone seemed so sure I'd taken it that I started wondering if I had made some mistake. At one point, I even looked for answers on Reddit, trying to find someone who had gone through something similar. The search for sister accused me of theft didn't bring up much, but the comments I did find were a mix of cut her off and family is family, you have to forgive. Not exactly helpful. I closed the app and immediately felt worse. Deep down, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. But it didn't take long for Jenna's dad's family to get involved. They were furious, of course, and didn't bother to hear my side. I started getting phone calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all demanding to know how I could do this to Jenna. They called me selfish, untrustworthy, and a terrible sister. I tried explaining that I didn't take the camera, but they weren't interested in listening. In their eyes, I was guilty, and that was that. People I barely knew started leaving comments on my old social media posts, calling me a thief and a liar. Some weren't even subtle, tagging me in posts that said things like, "Some people will do anything for money." It was humiliating. I ended up deleting my Facebook because I just couldn't take it anymore. Meanwhile, Jenna carried on like nothing had changed. She still went out with her friends and acted like I was overreacting to everything. Whenever I tried to bring up how much this was hurting me, she'd shut me down with passive-aggressive comments like, "Well, maybe if you didn't have something to hide, people wouldn't be talking." It got to the point where I started avoiding her entirely. I'd leave for work early and stay out late just to avoid being in the apartment at the same time as her. I even started eating out more, even though it was stretching my budget just to avoid dealing with her attitude. I didn't know what else to do. Talking to her didn't work, and ignoring her didn't either. And the worst part? No matter how hard I tried to prove my innocence, it didn't matter. In her mind, and apparently in everyone else's, I was guilty. I tried to talk to Mom about it, hoping she could help me figure out what to do, but even she seemed hesitant to get involved. "She's been through a lot," Mom said, like that was supposed to excuse everything. "Maybe she just needs time to calm down." "Calm down?" I snapped. "She's accusing me of stealing, Mom. She's trashing my apartment. She's letting her friends treat this place like a frat house. How is that okay?" Mom sighed, that exhausted sigh that meant she was too tired to deal with it. "I'll talk to her," she said, "but you need to be patient. She's still grieving." I wanted to scream. Patience? I'd been nothing but patient. I'd bent over backward for Jenna, and this is how she repaid me. I knew Mom was just trying to keep the peace, but it felt like she was siding with Jenna, even if she didn't mean to. Things kept escalating until I finally reached my breaking point. The situation reached its peak when one of Jenna's aunts from her dad's side called me. I hadn't spoken to her in years, and I couldn't even remember her name, but she came in hot. She told me in no uncertain terms that if I didn't return the camera immediately, they were going to file a police report against me for theft. A police report. I was so stunned, I almost laughed. I tried explaining that I didn't take anything and that they didn't have any proof, but she cut me off. "We don't care about your excuses," she snapped. "You've disrespected our family, and we'll make sure you face the consequences." That call lit a fire in me. I was done being quiet, done being patient, and definitely done letting Jenna drag me through the mud. This wasn't just petty gossip anymore. It was serious. If they went through with this report, it could ruin my job, my reputation, everything. When I got home that night, I was ready to put an end to it. I stormed straight to Jenna's room and threw open the door. She was lying on her bed, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. Seeing her so calm, like she wasn't actively ruining my life, made my blood boil. "We need to talk. Now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't even look up. "About what?" she said in that fake innocent tone she had perfected. I clenched my fists. "About how your dad's family is threatening to file a police report against me because of your stupid accusations. You need to fix this, Jenna. Now." Finally, she looked up. She raised an eyebrow like I was the unreasonable one. "Why should I?" she shrugged. "It serves you right." My jaw dropped. "Serves me right? Are you serious right now?" "You made yourself look guilty," she said flatly, dismissively. "Maybe if you weren't so sketchy about your car, people wouldn't think you stole the camera." That was it. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Jenna, are you actually kidding me? I've done nothing but help you. I'm paying your tuition. I let you live here for free. I've sacrificed everything to make your life easier, and this is how you repay me? By trashing my name and turning everyone against me?" She rolled her eyes. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you stole from me." The audacity, the sheer audacity of her words left me both furious and gutted. "Get the hell out," I snapped, each word louder than the last. "Pack your stuff and leave. I'm done with this. You're done here. For a moment, she looked shocked, like she didn't think I had it in me. But then her face hardened. Fine, she said, standing up. I don't need you anyway. I stormed out of the room, shaking with anger. I couldn't even be in the same space as her anymore. I went to the kitchen, gripping the counter to steady myself. I couldn't believe it had come to this. After everything I had done for her, this is how it ended. That's when I heard the banging. Not light thuds or stomping, but full-on destructive pounding. My heart jumped. I ran to the window and saw Jenna sprinting across the driveway, looking completely out of control. A baseball bat in hand. What on earth is she doing? I muttered, fumbling to unlock the door. I barely managed to get outside before I heard the sickening sound of the bat crashing into my car. She didn't stop. She pulled the bat back and swung again, hitting the hood this time, leaving a massive dent. I froze for a second, completely stunned. Jenna! I shouted as I rushed toward her. What are you doing? She turned to face me, a smug grin on her face as she gripped the bat tightly. Without saying a word, she swung again, slamming the bat into the side of my car with a loud thud, making the neighbors come outside to see the drama. My stomach sank as I stared at the new dent she'd just made. What is wrong with you? I yelled, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. She smirked, resting the bat on her shoulder. Oh, what? Is this your precious car? I thought it could use some character to match its owner. My fist clenched as I stepped closer. Jenna, drop the bat! Now! She laughed bitterly, tossing the bat onto the driveway like she'd made her point. Fine. You're so dramatic. It's just a stupid car, and you should have thought about that before telling me to get out like I'm some piece of trash you can just throw away. I didn't respond. I just pulled out my phone and dialed 911. When the dispatcher answered, I kept my voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside me. My sister just damaged my car with a bat. I need someone to come out here. Jenna's smug expression faltered when she realized what I was doing. You're seriously calling the cops over this? She asked, her voice full of disbelief. Wow, guess family doesn't mean anything to you. No, Jenna, I said firmly. Respect doesn't mean anything to you. I've had enough. A few minutes later, a patrol car pulled into the driveway. Jenna crossed her arms, her face neutral, but her posture was tense. The officer got out and immediately started assessing the situation, his eyes landing on the dent in my car and the bat lying on the ground. I explained everything to the officer, how Jenna had been causing problems for weeks, how she'd taken a bat to my car, and how I felt unsafe in my own home. Jenna tried to downplay it, saying it was just a small hit and accusing me of blowing things out of proportion, but the officer didn't seem to believe her. Did you hit the car with the bat? The officer asked her directly. Jenna shrugged. Yeah, but it's not like I destroyed it or anything. It's just a dent. The officer didn't seem amused. That's still property damage. Do you want to press charges? He asked, turning to me. Without hesitation, I said, yes, I do. Jenna's jaw dropped. You're really doing this? You left me no choice, I said firmly. This isn't just about the car anymore, Jenna. It's about everything. I've done everything I could for you, and this is how you repay me. I'm done. She didn't respond. She just stared at me as the officer took our statements. After a tense few minutes, the officer told her she needed to leave. Jenna stormed into the house, slamming every door as she grabbed her things. When she reappeared with her bags, she didn't look at me or say a word. She climbed into the car of a friend who had come to pick her up and drove off without even glancing back. The officer handed me a copy of the report and gave me advice on how to handle things moving forward. I nodded, but most of it blurred together in my head. I was too exhausted to process it all. When the officer left, I stood in the quiet driveway looking at the dent in my car and the bat lying on the ground. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my hands, and tossed it in the trash. It felt symbolic, like I was throwing away all the chaos Jenna had brought into my life. As I sit here now, one thing is clear, Jenna can kiss her college fund goodbye. After everything that's happened, there's no way to fix this. I've done my part, and if that makes me the bad guy in someone's eyes, so be it. Who do you think is the real a-hole here? I'll keep you posted if anything else happens, but for now, I'm moving on. Thanks for reading. Hey, y'all. I didn't expect this to blow up like it did. Thanks to everyone who shared their thoughts, whether you were on my side or thought I was the worst sister ever. It's been eye-opening, to say the least. To the ones who called me heartless, well, you're entitled to your opinion, but I'm sticking to mine. Here's what happened after Jenna left. I spent the next week trying to get my life back in order. Between dealing with the police report and explaining things to my landlord, it felt like a full-time job. I was lucky that Jenna hadn't really damaged my car too badly, and I managed to fix some scratches and dents. But the fallout from her actions hit hard and fast. The charges I filed triggered a hearing, and the word spread like wildfire around town. Suddenly, Jenna wasn't just the girl whose dad had died. She was the girl who'd gone off the rails and gotten herself into legal trouble. Her dad's family, who had backed her so quickly when she accused me of stealing the camera, now wanted nothing to do with her. The same people who had threatened me with a police report were now distancing themselves from her like she was a pariah. But they never apologized to me. And then the truth about the camera came out. It turns out Jenna hadn't even brought the camera to my apartment. She'd packed it in a box when she was moving in, but she accidentally left it at Mom's house. Mom found it while cleaning out the guest room, buried under some old clothes and papers. She called me the moment she found it, her voice a mix of relief and guilt. "I don't know what to say," Mom said. "I should have checked sooner." This whole mess could have been avoided. I was too stunned to be angry at that moment. The camera, the thing that had sparked this entire nightmare, had been sitting safely at Mom's house the whole time. When Jenna found out, she gave what could barely pass as an apology. "I was stressed," she said when I confronted her. "You have no idea what I've been going through." "You should have understood," she added. "Understood?" I snapped. "You accused me of stealing, trashed my name, tried to destroy my car, and now you're telling me I should have understood. Are you kidding me?" She didn't have a real answer. She just muttered something about being overwhelmed and walked away, like that was supposed to make everything better. But the damage had already been done. Jenna was starting to feel the consequences of her actions. The charges I filed meant she now had a record, which made it harder for her to find a part-time job to pay for school. Without my help covering her tuition, she couldn't afford to stay enrolled, and she had to drop out. This only fueled the gossip around town. Her friends, the same ones she defended so fiercely when we lived together, disappeared almost overnight. I guess it's easy to hang around when someone else is paying for your fun, but as soon as things got tough, they all bailed. Jenna was left with nothing but the mess she'd created. The fallout reached social media. People who had initially supported her when the rumors started were now posting vague apology statuses like, "Wow, some people really know how to ruin their own lives." It was petty, but honestly, I didn't feel bad for her. She'd brought it all on herself. Mom tried to mediate, as always, but even she was running out of patience with Jenna. "I love her," Mom said one evening when we were on the phone, "but she needs to learn. She's burned every bridge she had. She has to figure this out on her own." I knew Mom was struggling with guilt. She always does when it comes to Jenna, but I couldn't bring myself to feel the same way. I had given Jenna every chance to fix things, to take responsibility, and she threw them all away. Eventually, Jenna moved in with one of her old high school friends, who lived in a rundown apartment on the outskirts of town. From what I heard, it wasn't a great situation, but it was all she could afford. I didn't reach out, and neither did Mom. As for me, life slowly started returning to normal. The gossip around town died down after a while, and people at work finally stopped giving me side-eye. I even managed to repair some of the relationships that had been strained during all this. But as for things between me and Jenna, they were beyond repair. Every now and then, I'd hear updates about her from mutual acquaintances, how she was working odd jobs to make ends meet, how she'd burned bridges with even more people, how she seemed stuck in a cycle she couldn't break out of. The last time I saw her was a few weeks ago at the grocery store. She looked rough. Her eyes were hollow, her movements jittery, and her face wore a worn-down expression that wasn't like her at all. She glanced at me briefly, and for a second, I thought she might say something. But then she just turned and walked away, her steps unsteady like she couldn't get away from me fast enough. I don't know if we'll ever repair our relationship. The person she's become, I don't even recognize her anymore. I've started saving for my post-grad plans again, slowly but surely. The car, thankfully, is still in one piece, and I've even started taking weekend trips with friends again, something I haven't done in years. Do I regret helping Jenna in the first place? Not at all, but I do regret letting her walk all over me for as long as I did. Sometimes loving someone means knowing when to step back, and for me, that time is now. Thanks for sticking around and sharing your thoughts, good, bad, or brutally honest. I'll keep you posted if anything changes, but for now, I'm focusing on moving forward.